5 hardest tests of God you passed when dealing with the narcissist. There comes a time in your life when you're thrown into a fire so hot, so consuming, that it seems like everything you knew about love, loyalty, and truth is melting right in front of your eyes. That fire was the narcissist, but let me tell you something, you didn't just survive it. You were being tested, and you passed. See, when God wants to prepare you for a greater destiny, He doesn't send you comfort. He sends you challenge. When He wants to shape your soul into a sword, He puts you through fire, pressure, and pounding. And the narcissist, that was your battlefield. That was your test. That was your awakening. So today, I'm here to walk you through the 5 hardest tests God gave you in that toxic storm. In the 6th keynote, the most powerful one, is the divine reward you unlock for passing them. Are you ready to claim your strength? Are you ready to understand that you've already walked through the valley of shadows and came out with divine fire in your eyes? Then let's go. The test of loving without losing yourself. You started out believing love could heal anything. You thought if you just gave enough, proved your worth enough, stayed loyal enough, that this person would finally see you, love you, cherish you. That was your heart speaking. And God saw that, but He was also watching for something deeper. He wanted to see if you could love someone who was broken, someone who weaponized your compassion, and still not let that love become a noose around your own neck. He wanted to see if you could hold onto your humanity without handing over your identity. The narcissist didn't just take your time, they tried to take your soul. Every word of gaslighting, every moment of emotional manipulation was a drill digging into the core of who you are. And still you loved. Still you gave. Still you believed in goodness. But something inside you snapped one day. Not in rage, not in vengeance, but in clarity. You realized that love should never require self-abandonment. You realized that giving to someone who only takes is not love, it's sacrifice. And not the holy kind, and that's when you began to fight for your soul. You didn't turn to bitterness. You didn't become like them. You chose to hold on to your heart without selling it to someone who was trying to destroy it. You passed the test the moment you stopped confusing love with loyalty to abuse. You passed the test when you looked in the mirror and said, I will not lose myself to keep someone else whole. You showed that love doesn't mean surrender. You proved that love without boundaries isn't love at all, it's bondage. And when you chose freedom with love, instead of love with chains, you stepped into your power. Because the test wasn't just about how much love you had to give. It was about whether you would keep loving yourself in the process. And you did. You loved without losing the essence of your soul. That's why you passed. The test of standing alone. There was a moment when everything fell silent. The narcissist made sure of that. They isolated you, turned others against you, made you feel like you were the crazy one. And when you reached out for help, many turned away, unsure of what to believe. But this was no accident. This was the test. God wanted to know, when no one claps for you, when no one sees your pain, when you are in the depths of emotional hell, will you still choose to stand? It was in that silence that your character was forged. It was in that loneliness that your voice began to rise, because you didn't just sit there in the pit. You started to build from the ground up, brick by brick, word by word, prayer by prayer. You stopped waiting for someone to rescue you. You became your own rescue mission. You started listening to that quiet whisper inside that said, you are more than what they did to you. And when the world didn't validate you, you validated yourself. When friends ghosted you, you kept showing up for you. When family didn't believe you, you chose to believe yourself. That's when God took notice, because standing alone isn't just about surviving without support. It's about becoming unshakable in your truth even when you're the only one holding it. You began to speak the truth out loud. You stopped softening your story to make others comfortable. You stopped asking for permission to feel. And slowly, the loneliness turned into liberation. The silence became sacred. You weren't alone. You were being aligned. That's the kind of strength no narcissist can ever touch again. Because once you've stood alone in truth, No lie can ever dominate you again. You pass that test by becoming your own hero. The test of forgiving without reopening the door. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's not pretending it didn't hurt. It's not inviting the tornado back into your home and hoping this time it won't destroy everything. The test wasn't whether you could let them back in. The test was whether you could release the bitterness without returning to the battlefield. See, God was watching to see if you would get stuck in rage, if you would rot in resentment, or if you could rise above it without compromising your boundaries. You had every right to be angry. You had every reason to scream, to hate, to lash out. But you chose something different. You chose freedom over fury, not because they deserved it, but because you did. Forgiveness was the key that unlocked your shackles. It wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about letting yourself off the leash of emotional bondage. You looked in the mirror and said, I refuse to let their poison become my prison. And you kept the door shut, because love can forgive and still say no more. Because mercy can still walk away, you drew a line. You built a wall, not from hate, but from wisdom, because you learned that self-protection is not selfish. It's sacred. And when the temptation came to go back, to re-explain, to seek closure, you didn't fall for it. You remembered who they were the first time. You passed the test when you realized forgiveness isn't an invitation. It's a release, a soul release, a divine declaration that says, I am no longer available for emotional abuse. That's power. That's growth, that's victory, the test of holding onto your identity they tried to erase you. Let's not sugarcoat it. The narcissist didn't just lie to you, they lied about you. They spun a reality where they were the hero and you were the villain. Gaslighting wasn't just a tactic, it was warfare, designed to make you question everything, your memories, your intentions, your worth. But even in the fog, even when you doubted your own sanity, there was a part of you that refused to die. That quiet core inside that whispered, this isn't who I am. God saw that flicker and he fanned it. He allowed the storm not to break you, but to burn away everything false so you could see your true face again. Piece by piece, you began to reclaim your voice. You started saying your name out loud again. You wrote. You prayed. You remembered who you were before the trauma rewrote your script. And every time you chose your truth over their version of you, every time you corrected the narrative, every time you stood in your identity, the heavens roared. Because you passed the test. You didn't let them define you. You didn't let their lies become your reality. You didn't let their projection become your identity. You stood back up, even with a bruised spirit. You rebuilt your sense of self, and you realized that you don't have to explain who you are to anyone who insists on misunderstanding you. That's the power of divine identity. You remembered you were fearfully and wonderfully made. You passed the test when you stopped letting their opinion of you have power over your destiny. The test of choosing the pain of growth over the comfort of chaos. You knew the cycle. The highs and lows, the love bombing and the devaluation, the sweet words followed by cold silence, and part of you got used to it. Chaos became comfortable. But here came the test. Would you stay in the storm because it was familiar, or would you walk out into the unknown, the terrifying unknown of healing? God asked you to choose, not once, but every day. To choose growth, to choose pain, to choose truth, even when it ripped your heart wide open. And you did. You walked away. You cut ties. You blocked, deleted, cried, broke down. But you kept walking. You faced your fears. You sat in the withdrawal. You detoxed from the addiction to their attention. You stopped romanticizing the roller coaster. You chose therapy, journaling, support, solitude. You chose discomfort with purpose over comfort with destruction. And God took notice because this was the test that mattered most, the test of choice, the test of change, the test of becoming new. You didn't numb it, you felt it, you didn't fake it, you healed it. You didn't wait for an apology, you gave yourself closure. You passed the test when you walked through the fire of growth and refused to look back, because you finally believed your peace matters more than their presence. And that's when your healing truly began. The divine reward, stepping into your calling. Now we arrive at the moment God was preparing you for all along. The reason behind the fire, the storm, the silence. You see, he wasn't just testing you, he was training you, he wasn't punishing you, he was promoting you. But first, he had to get rid of everything that wasn't you. All the false beliefs, all the emotional parasites, all the codependent patterns gone, burned in the fire you walked through, and now stripped, refined, resurrected. You rise, because the reward for passing the hardest tests is not comfort, it's clarity. It's alignment, it's divine power. You now know who you are. You now know what you carry, and you now know what you will never settle for again. You don't look at your pain as punishment anymore. You look at it as preparation. And that shift changes everything. You start speaking with authority. You walk into rooms differently. You command peace like it's your birthright, because it is. You have vision now. You have fire. You have discernment. What used to confuse you now clarifies you. What used to attract you now repels you. You can spot manipulation in seconds. You can smell deception before it even speaks, because God gave you eyes that see through shadows. And the beauty is, you didn't become hardened, you became holy, you didn't lose your heart. You found your soul, you are now a vessel of truth, a weapon of light, a breaker of chains, and your calling. It's not just to survive narcissists, it's to lead others out of their grip. That's the reward, that's the reason, that's why it had to hurt so much. You didn't just pass the tests of God, you stepped into your divine mission. And now nothing will ever be the same again. So now you see it. Every tear you cried, every night you questioned your worth, every moment you felt abandoned wasn't just pain. It was purpose. It wasn't just a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. God wasn't trying to destroy you. He was revealing the indestructible you. Because the truth is, you weren't just dealing with a narcissist. You were walking through fire, and in that fire, your old self burned away. The self that tolerated mistreatment, the self that begged for love, the self that thought survival was enough. But look at you now. You loved without losing yourself. You stood alone and still stood strong. You forgave without reopening the door. You held on to your identity when everything tried to erase it. And you chose growth even when comfort screamed your name. And for that, for every sacred yes you gave when the easy answer was no, God has elevated you. He's promoted you in the spirit. You've stepped into a higher calling. You are no longer just a survivor. You are a warrior of the light, a leader, a living testimony. So don't hang your head in shame over what you went through. Lift your head high and wear your scars like crowns, because those tests, they didn't destroy you. They defined you, and now the world better prepare, because the version of you that walks out of that fire is unstoppable. You're not who you were before the narcissist. You're better. You're bolder. You're born again in truth. And from this moment forward, walk in that power, speak from that fire, live from that clarity. Because your destiny didn't die in the trauma, it was born through it. And now it's time, go lead, go shine, go change the world. God's not done with you, He's just getting started.